1998, members of the Tectonic Theater Project traveled to Laramie, Wyoming and conducted interviews. During the next year, we would return to Laramie several times and conduct over 200 interviews. The play you are about to see is edited from those interviews, as well as journal entries from members of the company and other found texts. Company member Greg Parati.
My first interview was with Detective Sergeant Hing of the Laramie Police Department. At the start of the interview, he was sitting at his desk, sitting something like this. I was born and raised here. My family is third generation. My grandparents moved here in the early 1900s. We've had basically three. Well, my daughter makes the fourth generation. Quite a while. It's a good place to live. Good people. Lots of space. Now, all the towns in southern Wyoming are laid out in space because of the railroad that came through. It's how far I could go before having to refuel and rewater, and Laramie was a major stopping point. That's why the towns are spaced so far apart. We're one of the largest states in the country and the least populated.
There's so much space between people and towns here, so much time for reflection.
Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming.
You have an opportunity in your life to be happy here. I found that people here were nicer than in the Midwest, where I used to teach, because they were happy. They were glad the sun was shining, and it shines a lot here.
You know what you have is, you have your old-time, traditional-type ranchers. They've been here forever. Laramie's been the hub where they get their supplies and stuff like that.
Stewardship is one thing all our ancestors taught us.
Eileen Engen, rancher.
If you don't take care of your land, then you ruin it and you lose your living. So first of all, you have to take care of your land and do everything you can to improve it.
I love it here.
Doc O'Connor, limousine driver.
You couldn't put me back in that mess out there back east. Best thing about it is the climate. The cold, the wind. They say the Wyoming wind will drive a man insane, but you know what? It don't bother me. Well, some of the times it bothers me, but most times it don't.
And then you got the university population.
I moved here after living in a couple of big cities.
Philip Dubois, president of the University of Wyoming.
I loved it there, but you'd have to be out of your mind to let your kids out after dark. Here, I'll let my kids out till 11 o'clock at night, and I don't think twice.
And then you got the people that live in Laramie, basically.
I moved here from rural Texas.
Zachy Salmon, Laramie resident.
Now, in Laramie, if you don't know a person, you will definitely know someone they know. So it can only be 1 degree removed at most, and for me, I love it. I mean, I love to go to the grocery store because I get to visit with 4 or 5 or 6 different people every time I go. And I mean, I don't really mind people knowing my business because what's my business? I mean, my business is basically good.
I like the trains too. They don't bother me. Well, some of the times they bother me, but most times they don't. Even though one goes by every 13 minutes out where I live.
Doc actually lives up in Bossler, but everybody in Laramie knows him. He's also not really a doctor.
They used to carry cattle, them trains. Now all they carry is diapers and cars.
I grew up in Cody, Wyoming.
April Silva, university student.
Laramie's better than where I grew up, I'll give it that.
It's a good place to live. Good people, lots of space. Now, when the incident happened with that boy, a lot of press people came here. And one day they followed me out to the crime scene. And it was an absolutely gorgeous day. Real clear and crisp sky with just that blue. You just can't paint it. It's just sky blue. The mountains in the background and a little snow on them. And this one reporter, person, he looked at me and he said,
"Well, who found the boy? Who was out here anyway?"
And I said, well, this is a really popular place for people to run, and mountain biking really big out here, horseback riding, it's close to town. He looked at me and he said,
"Now, who in the hell would want to run out here?"
and I'm thinking, sir, you're just missing the point. All you gotta do is turn around, see the mountains, smell the air, listen to the birds, just take in what's around you. And they were just nothing but the story. And I didn't feel judged, I just felt they were stupid. They're just missing the point. They're just missing the whole point.
It's hard to talk about Laramie now. To tell you what Laramie is for us.
Jedediah Schultz.
If you would have asked me before, I would have told you Laramie is a beautiful town. Secluded enough that it can have your own identity. A town with a strong sense of community. Everyone knows everyone. A town with a personality that most larger cities are stripped of. Now, after Matthew, I would say that Laramie is a town defined by an accident, a crime. We become Waco. We become Jasper. We're now a definition, a sign. Now, we may be able to get rid of that, but it will sure take a while.
Journal entries. Members of the company, Andy Paris.
Voices called, saying he had an idea for his next theater project. But there was a somberness to his voice. So I asked him what it's all about, and he told me he wanted to do a piece about what's happening in Wyoming.
Stephen Belber.
Lee told me the company was thinking of going out to Laramie to conduct interviews and that they wanted me to come. But I'm hesitant. I've no real interest into prying into towns unraveling.
Amanda Garner.
I've never done anything like this in my life. How do you get people to talk to you? What do you ask?
Moises Kaufman.
The company has agreed that we should go to Laramie for a week and interview people. I'm a bit afraid of taking 10 people on a trip of this nature. Must make some safety rules. No one works alone. Everyone carries cell phones. Have made some preliminary contacts with Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming. She is hosting a party for us our first night in Laramie. She has promised to introduce us to possible interviewees.
I must tell you that when I first heard that you were thinking of coming here, when you first called me, I wanted to say, you've just kicked me in the stomach. Why are you doing this to me? Then I thought, that's stupid. You're not doing this to me. And more importantly, I thought about it and decided that we've had so much negative closure on this whole thing, and students really need to talk. When this happened, they started talking about it, and then the media descended and all dialogue stopped. You know, I really love my students because they're free thinkers, and you may not like what they have to say, and you may not like their opinions because they can be very redneck, but they're honest and they're truthful. So there's an excitement here. There's a dynamic here with my students that I never had in the Midwest or in North Dakota, because there was so much Puritanism that dictated how people looked at the world that a lot of the times they didn't have an opinion. You couldn't get them to express an opinion. And quite honestly, I'd rather have opinions that I don't like and have that dynamic in education. There's a student I think you should talk to. His name is Jedediah Schultz.
I've lived in Wyoming my whole life. Family's been in Wyoming for generations. Now, when it came time to go to college, my parents couldn't afford to send me to college. I wanted to study theater, and I knew that if I was going to go to college, I was going to have to get on a scholarship. So, they have this competition each year, this Wyoming State High School competition. And I knew that I could win, and I knew that if I didn't win best scene, I wasn't going to get a scholarship. So, I went to the university looking for good scenes. And I asked one of the professors, I was like, I need a killer scene. And he was like, here you go, this is it. And it was from Angels in America. So I read it, and I knew that I could win best scene if I did a good enough job. And when the time came, I told my mom and dad, I said they would come to the competition. Now, you have to understand, my parents go to everything. Every ball game, every hockey game, everything I've ever done. And they brought me into the room, told me if I did that scene, that they wouldn't come to the competition. Because they believe it is wrong, that homosexuality is wrong. And I didn't know what to do. I never, ever got against my parents' wishes. So I was kind of worried about it, but I decided to do it. And the only thing I can remember about the competition is that when we were done, me and my scene partner, we came up to each other, shook hands, and there was a standing ovation. Oh man, it was amazing. And we took first place and we won. And that's how come I couldn't afford to be at the university, because of that scene. It was one of the best moments of my life. And my parents weren't there. And to this day, that is the one thing my parents didn't see me do. Thinking back on it, I think, why did I do it? Why did I oppose my parents? Because I'm not gay. So why did I do it? And I guess the only honest answer I can give is that, well, I wanted to win. It was such a good scene. It was like the best scene. Do you know Mr. Kushner? Maybe you can tell me.
Company member Greg Perotti.
We arrived today in the Denver airport and drove to Laramie. Once we crossed the Wyoming border, I swear I saw a herd of buffalo. I also thought it was interesting the Wyoming sign said,
Wyoming, like no place on earth.
Instead of Wyoming, like no place else on earth.
Company member Lee Fondakowski.
I stopped at a local inn for a bite to eat. My waitress said to me,
Hi, my name's Debbie. I was born in 1954, and Debbie Reynolds was big then. So yes, there are a lot of us Debbies around, but I promise I won't slap you if you leave your elbows on the table.
Today, the company tried to explain to me to no avail what chicken fried steak was.
Now, are you from Wyoming, or are you just passing through?
we're just passing through.
Company member Barbara Pitts.
We arrived in Laramie tonight. Just past the Welcome to Laramie sign, population 26,687. The first thing to greet us was Walmart. In the dark, we could be on any main drag in America, fast food chains, gas stations. But as we drove into the downtown area by the railroad tracks, the buildings still looked like more of a turn-of-the-century western town. Oh, and as we drove past the University Inn, on the sign were amenities such as heated pool or cable TV are usually touted. It said, hate is not a Laramie value.
Greg Perotti.
I met today with two longtime Laramie residents, Allison Mears and Marge Murray, two social service workers who taught me a thing or two.
Well, what Laramie used to be like when Marge was growing up, well, it was mostly rural.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, you know. My kids all had horses.
I mean, there was a lot more land. You could keep your horses, your pet cows, your little chickens, you know, just have your little bit of acreage.
Yeah, I could walk around the house in my all-togethers, do the housework while the kids were in school, and nobody could see me. And if they got that close,
well, then that's their problem.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I got the expression right. In your all-togethers?
Yeah. Honey, why wear clothes?
Now, how's he going to use that in his play?
So this was a big ranching town.
Oh, not just ranching. This is a big railroad town at one time before they moved everything to Cheyenne and Green River and Omaha. This is a big drive-through spot for the railroad. So, what was it in the 50s? Well, they had one big roundhouse. They had such a shop, they could build a complete engine.
They sure did. My mom worked there.
Your mom worked in a roundhouse?
Yep, her name was Minnie. We used to sing that song for her. You know the song?
What song?
Run for the roundhouse, Minnie, they can't corner you there.
But I'll tell you, Wyoming is bad in terms of jobs. I mean, the university has the big whoop-de-doo jobs. But in Wyoming, unless you're a professional, well, the bulk of people are working minimum wage jobs.
Yeah, I've been either in the service industry or bartending most of my life. Now I know everybody in town.
And she does.
And I do. Now let me tell you, here in Laramie there's a difference, and there always has been. What it is a class distinction. It's about the well-educated and the ones who are not. You see, the well-educated ones don't understand why the ones who aren't educated don't get educated. It's like I told you before, my kids had to fight because their mom was a bartender. Never mind that. I was the best damn bartender in town.
And she was.
That's not bragging, that's facts.
But here in Laramie, if it weren't for the university, we'd just be SOL.
What's SOL?
Well, do I have to say it? It's shit out of luck. Lordy, you got that on tape. Boy, you're getting an education today.
I guess I am. So, let me ask you, what was your response when this happened to Matthew Shepard?
Now, I've been fortunate enough to know many of the people on the case. You see, my daughter, she's on the sheriff's department. As far as the gay issue, I don't give a damn one way or another, as long as they don't bother me. And even if they did, I'd be like, no thank you. And that's the attitude for most of the Laramie population, you know? They might poke one if they were in a bar situation, you know, they'd been drinking. They might even smack one in the mouth, but then they just walk away. Most of them said they would just say, I don't swing that way, whistle on about their business. Laramie's live and let live.
I'd say that Marge probably knows a lot more than she's even willing to share, and we have to respect her for that.
So, what are you gonna do with this story anyway?
Oh, well, we haven't decided yet. We think when we're done, we're gonna try and make background to Laramie.
In that case, there are things that I won't tell you.
Company member Andy Paris.
Today, for the first time, we met someone who actually knew Matthew Shepard. Trish Steger, owner of a shop in town, referred to him as Matt.
Matt used to come into my shop. That's how I knew him.
It was the first time I had heard him referred to as Matt instead of Matthew. Did he go by Matt to everyone?
Well, on the 2nd of October, I got a phone call about 10 after 7.
Doc O'Connor.
It was Matthew Shepard, and he said, can you pick me up at the corner of 3rd and Grand? So anyhow, I pulled to the corner to see Matthew Shepard. You know, it's a little guy, about 5'2", soaking wet. I bet you 97 pounds tops. He said he was 110 in the paper, but I wouldn't believe it. This man, he was really only 5'2", maybe 5'1". So anyhow, he walks up to the window, and I'm going to go in steps so you can better understand the principle of this man. So I walks up to the window, and I say, are you Matthew Shepard? And he says, yeah, I'm Matthew Shepard, but I don't want you to call me Matthew or Mr. Shepard. My name's Matt, and I'm gay and we're going to a gay bar. Do you have a problem with that? And I said, how are you paying? The fact is, there are no gay bars in Laramie. And for that matter, there aren't any in Wyoming either. So he was asking me to take him down to Fort Collins, Colorado, about an hour away. Matt was a blunt little guy, you see what I'm saying? And that's why I liked him, because he was straightforward. Maybe gay, but straightforward. You see what I'm saying?
I don't know, you know, how does any one person ever tell about another? You should really talk to my sister Romaine. She is a very close friend of Matthew's.
We never really called him Matthew, actually. Most of the time we just called him Choo Choo, because, you know, we used to call him Math Choo, and then we just call him Choo Choo. But whenever I think of Matthew, I always think of his incredible beaming smile. I mean, he'd walk in and he'd be like, you know, and he'd just smile at everyone. He just made you feel great, and he would like stare people down in the coffee shop. He always wanted to sit on the end of the seat so he could talk to me while I was working. And if somebody was sitting in his spot, he would just sit there and stare at them until they left, and then he would claim his spot. But Matthew definitely had a political side to him. I mean, he really wanted to get into political affairs. That's all his big interest was watching CNN or MSNBC. I mean, that's the only TV station I ever saw his TV turn to. Matthew was really smart in political affairs, but not too smart in the common sense things. So he moved to Laramie to go to school.
Matthew was very shy when he first came in.
John Peacock, Matthew Shepard's academic advisor.
To the point of being somewhat mousy, I'd almost say. It was clear he was having some difficulties adjusting, but this was home for him, and he made that quite clear. And so his mousiness, his shyness, gave way to someone who was just excited about this path he was going to embark on. Figuring out why to work on human rights and how he was going to do that. When this happened, he began to bloom a little bit. He began to say, wow, there are opportunities here. The things I can do in this world. I can be important.
I did hear from Matthew about 48 hours before his attack. And he told me that he had joined the gay and lesbian group on campus and that he was really enjoying it. You know, he was getting ready for Pride Week and whatnot. I mean, he was totally stoked about going to school. Yeah, he was really happy about being there.
And in retrospect, and I can only say this in retrospect, of course, I think that's where it was headed, towards human rights. It's only as the irony and tragedy of this.
let me tell you something else here. There's more gay people in Wyoming meets the eye. I know, for a fact, not particularly but what do you call them? The queens, the gay people, the queens, you know, run around faggot type. No, they're the kind that throw bale, hay, jump on horses, brain and kick ass. You see what I'm saying? As I always say, don't mess with the Wyoming queer because they'll kick your ass. But that's not the point. I've been lived up here some 40 odd years, you see what I'm saying? And I don't think Wyoming people give a damn one way or another if you're gay or straight. That's just what I just said. Now, if there's 8 men and 1 woman in a Wyoming bar, you may stop and think who's getting what. Now, geez, it don't take a big intelligent mind to figure that one out.
My understanding when I first came here
Catherine Connolly.
is that I was the first out lesbian or gay faculty member on campus, and that was in 1992, so that wasn't that long ago. I was asked in my interview what my husband did, and so I came out then. Do you want to hear a funny story? When you first get here as a new faculty member, there's all these things you have to do. And so I was in my office, and I noticed that this woman called. I was expecting, you know, it was a health insurance phone call or something like that. And so I called her back, and I could hear her. She was working on her keyboard, just clicking away, and I said, you know, this is Kathy Connolly returning your phone call. And she said, oh, it's you. And I thought, this is bizarre. And she said, I hear you're gay. I hear you are. And I was like, uh-huh. And she said, I hear you came as a couple. I'm one too. Not a couple, just a person. And so she was a kind of a lesbian who heard that I was coming, and she wanted to come over and meet me immediately. She later told me that there were other lesbians she knew that wouldn't be seen with me, that I would irreparably taint them, that just to be seen with me could be a problem.
When I came here, I knew it would be hard as a gay man.
Jonas Sloanaker.
But I'd keep telling myself, people should live where they want to live. And every now and again, I'd go down to Denver and I'd go to them gay bars and people would ask me where I was from, and I'd say, Laramie, Wyoming. And I met so many men down there, so many gay men that grew up here. And they're like, that's not a place where I can live. How can you live there? And I had to get out. But every now and again, there'd be this one guy. Oh gosh, I really miss Laramie. I mean, I love it there. That's where I want to live. And they get this starry-eyed look, and I'm just like, if that's where you want to live, do it. I mean, imagine if more gay people lived in small towns. But it's easier said than done, of course.
Today we are moving from our motel to our Best Western.
Moises Kaufman.
My hope is that it is a better Western.
Amanda Groenick.
Today we divided up to go to different churches in the community. Moises and I were given a Baptist church. We were welcomed into the services by the Reverend herself, standing at the entrance to the chapel. This is what I remember of her sermon that morning.
My dear brothers and sisters, I'm here today to bring you the word of the Lord. Now, I have a simple truth that I share with my colleagues, and I'm going to tell it to you today. The word is either sufficient or it is not. Scientists tell me that human history, that the world is 5 billion or 6 billion years old, because after all, what's a billion years, give or take? The Bible tells me that human history is 6,000 years old. The word is either sufficient or it is not.
Ah, the sociology of religion in the West.
Stephen Mead Johnson, Unitarian minister.
Dominant religious traditions in this town, Baptists, Mormons, they're everywhere. It's not just Salt Lake, you know. They're like jam on toast down here.
The Mormon Church has a little different thing going that irritates some folks.
Doug Law, state ecclesiastical leader of the Mormon Church.
And that is that we absolutely believe that God still speaks to man. We don't think it just happened and some folks wrote it in the Bible. God speaks to us today, and we believe that. We believe that the prophet of the church has the authority to receive revelation and inspiration from God.
So, the spectrum would be on the left side of the panel. So far left that I'm probably sitting by myself is me and the Unitarian Church. Unitarians are by and large humanists, many of whom are atheists. I mean, we're not even sure we're a real religion. And on the right side of the spectrum, to his credit, Father Roger, Catholic priest, who is well established here. God bless him. He did not equivocate at all when this happened. He hosted the vigil for Matthew that night.
I was really jolted because, when we did the vigil, we wanted to get other ministers involved, and we called some of them, and they did not want to get involved, and that angered me immensely. We're supposed to stand out as leaders. And I thought, wow, what is going on here?
God has set boundaries, and one of our responsibilities is to learn. What is it that God wants? So, you study Scripture, you look to your leaders, then you kind of know what the bounds are. Now, once you kind of know what the bounds are, then you sort of get a feel for what's out of bounds. A proclamation was put out upon the family. A family is defined as one woman and one man and children. That is a family. That is about as clear as you can state it. There's no sexual deviation in the Mormon Church. No leniency. We just think it's out of bounds.
I warn you, you will be mocked. You will be ridiculed for the singularity of your faith. But let the Bible be your guide. It's in there. It's all in there.
The Christian pastors, many of the conservative ones, were silent on this. Conservative Christians love to use the Bible to tell the rest of the world that it says here in the Bible. And most Americans believe, and they do, that the Bible is the Word of God. And how are you going to fight with that?
I am a biblicist, which means the Bible does not need me to be true. The Bible is true whether I believe it or not. The Word is either sufficient or it is not.
I arrived in Laramie on September 15th. I looked around, tumbleweed, cement factory, and I thought to myself, what the hell am I doing here in Wyoming? 3 weeks later, I found out what I was doing in Wyoming.
I had breakfast this morning with a university student named Zubaida. She is an Islamic feminist who likes to do things her own way.
I've lived in Laramie since I was 4. Yeah, my parents are originally from Egypt. 2 years ago, because I am Muslim, I decided to start wearing a scarf. That's really changed my life in Laramie. Yeah, like, people say things to me like, why do you have to wear that thing on your head? And it's like, when I go to the grocery store, I'm not looking to give people Islam 101, you know what I mean? So I'll be like, it's a part of my religion, and they'll be, this is the worst part, because they'll be like, I know it's a part of your religion, but why? And it's like, how am I supposed to go into the whole doctrine of physical modesty and my own spiritual relationship with the Lord while standing there with my pop and chips, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just so unreal to me that, yeah, that a group from New York would be writing a play about Laramie. Like, I was picturing, like, you're gonna be in a play about my town. You're gonna be on stage in New York and you're gonna be acting like you're us. That is so weird.
Hello?
Yes, hello. My name is Amanda Gronick. I'm here in Laramie working with a theater company. I went to First Presbyterian on Sunday, and I was extremely interested in talking with the Reverend about some of his thoughts about recent events.
Well, I don't think he'll want to talk to you. He has very biblical views on homosexuality. He doesn't condone that kind of violence, but he doesn't condone that kind of lifestyle, you know what I mean? He was just bombarded with press after this happened, and the media's been just terrible about the whole thing.
Oh, I know. I really understand. It must have just been terrible.
Oh yes, I think we're all hoping this just goes away.
Well, Do you think maybe I could call back and speak with your husband just briefly?
Well, all right. You can call him back tonight at 9 o'clock.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll do that.
Today, Barbara and I went to the Fireside Bar, which is the last place Matthew was seen in public.
The Fireside definitely feels like a typical college bar with a couple of pool tables and a stage area for a karaoke night. Still, the few regulars in the late afternoon were hardly the college crowd.
First person we talked to was Matt Nicholson, the owner. My great-great-grandfather moved here in 1862. He owned Laramie's first opera house. It was called Old Blue Front. Then, in 1870, Grandma Louisa Swain cast the first women's ballot in any free election in the world. That's why Wyoming is the equality state. So what I want to do is I want to reestablish my bar business as Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Times Emporium. I want to have a restaurant. I want to have a gift shop. I want to have a pool hall and do all this crap. Every night's ladies' night. So the Fireside is just the first step towards the Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Times Emporium.
So, what about the night Matthew Shepard was here?
We had karaoke that night. 20 or 30 kids. Matthew comes in, sitting right about where you are now, just hanging out. I mean, if you really want to talk to someone, you should talk to Matt Galloway. He was the kid that was bartending that night. His character speaks for itself. Hey! Is Galloway bartending tonight?
I'm gonna make this brief, quick, get it over with, but it'll be everything. Factual, just the facts. Here we go. 10 o'clock, I clock in usual time. Tuesday night, 10:30, Matthew Shepard shows up. Alone, sits down, orders a Heineken.
Phil Labrie, friend of Matthew Shepard.
Matt liked to drink a Heineken and nothing else. A Heineken, even if you had to pay $9.50 for a six-pack, he'd always buy the same beer.
So what can I tell you about Matthew Shepard? If you had 100 customers like him, it'd be the most perfect bar I've ever been in. And it'll be nothing to do with sexual orientation. Absolute manners, polite, intelligent, taking care of me as in tips. Everything. Conversation, dress nice, clean cut. Some people you just know. Sits down, please, thank you, offers intellect within their vocabulary. So he just takes it there, didn't seem to have any worries or like he was looking for anyone, just enjoys his drink and the company around. Now, approximately 11:45, Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson show up. And as you know, they came in very stone-faced, dirty, grungy, rude, gimme, that type of thing. And they came up to the bar and paid for a beer with dimes and quarters, which you don't forget that. I mean, you don't forget that. $5.50 in dimes and quarters, that's a freaking nightmare. Now, they didn't seem intoxicated at the time. They just paid for their beer and took the pitcher with them to the pool room and kept to themselves. Next thing I know, they were walking around, no beer, and I remember thinking to myself that I'm not going to ask them if they want another one because I have a good feeling they don't have any more money.
Romaine Patterson.
Money meant nothing to Matthew because he came from a lot of it. He would like hand over his wallet in 2 seconds because money meant nothing. His shoes might have meant something. They say it was a robbery. I don't buy it for even an iota of a second.
A few moments later, I saw Aaron and Russell talking to Matthew Shepard.
Aaron said a guy walked up to him, said he was gay and wanted to get Darren and Russ.
Kristen Price, girlfriend of Aaron McKinney.
And they got aggravated with it, told him he was straight, walked off and said they wanted nothing to do with it. He said that is when him and Russell decided to go to the bathroom and said they were gay and get him in the truck and rob him.
Okay, no. They stated that Matt approached them, that he came onto them. I absolutely disbelieve, positively refute that statement 100%. Refute it. I'm going to give you 2 reasons why. 1, character reference. Why would he approach them? Why them? He wasn't approaching anybody else that night. They say he was gay, he was a flaming gay. That he'd come onto them? BS. He never came onto me, hello? And he came onto them? I don't believe it. 2, territorialism is the word I will use for this. And that's the fact that Matt had been seen there all night. Aaron and Russell were in the pool room. Upon their first interaction, they were in Matt's area. So who approached who by that?
But Matthew was the kind of person, like, he would never not talk to someone for any reason. If somebody started talking to him, he'd just be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. He never had a problem striking up a conversation with anybody.
Matt did get lonely a lot of the time, and me knowing Matt, knowing how gullible Matt could be, he would have walked right into it. The fact that he was there, alone, without any friends, made him that much more vulnerable.
So what I'm saying, and this is what I'm testifying to, because I'm also basically the key eyewitness. Basically what I'm saying is that I saw Matt leave. I saw two individuals leave with Matthew. I didn't see their faces at the time, but I saw the back of their heads. And the next thing I know, McKinney and Henderson were no longer there. You do the math.
Actually, I think the DJ was the last one to say something to him on his way out that night. Offered him a cigarette or something. His name is Shadow.
I was the last person Matt talked to before he left the far side. I was just, screwing around with my stuff, and he stopped me. I stopped him, actually, and he's like, hey, Shadow, da-da-da. I'm like, look, man, you getting ready to leave? He's like, yeah, man. Then I'd seen those two guys over there. You could see it. He was looking over to them, and they were looking back at him. So I stood and talked to Matt for like a good 10 minutes. And I'd seen them, those two guys, them getting worried, anxious to leave and stuff. So when they took off, I'd seen it. I'd seen them when they took off. It was in a black truck. It was a small truck, and the three of them sat in the front, and Matt sat in the middle. And I didn't think nothing of it, I didn't think them guys was gonna be like that.
A friend of Aaron McKinney.
Oh, I've known Aaron a long time. Aaron was a good kid. I liked Aaron a lot. That's why I was shocked when I heard this. I'm like, I knew he was living out far, at his trailer house is what he told me, with his girl. They just started dating last summer. They must have gotten pregnant as soon as they started dating, because they had a kid. Aaron was only 21 years old when he was running around with a kid. You see, that's the kind of person Aaron was. Just like he always dressed in big clothes, like Tommy Hilfiger, Polo, Gucci. At the time I knew him, he was just a young kid. He just wanted to fit in, acting tough, acting cool. But you could get in his face about it, he would back down like he was some kind of scared kid.
Sherry Anderson.
Russell was just so sweet. He was the one who was the Eagle Scout. I mean, his whole presence was just quiet and sweet. So, of course, it doesn't make sense to me. And I know people snap and whatever, and it wasn't a real intimate relationship. I was just his landlord. I did work with him at the chuck wagon, too. And I remember, like, at the Christmas party, he was just totally drunk out of his mind. Like, we were all pretty much just party time. But he wasn't belligerent. He didn't change. His personality didn't change. He was still the same little, meek Russell. I remember him coming up to me and saying, when you get a chance, Sherry, can I have a dance? Which we never did get around to doing that, but now I just want to shake him, Like, what were you thinking? What the hell were you thinking?
The fence. I've been out there 4 times. I've taken visitors. That place has become a pilgrimage site. Clearly, that's a very powerful personal experience to go out there. It's so stark and empty, and you can't help but think of Matthew out there for 18 hours in nearly freezing temperatures. With that view, isolated up there, and the God, my God, why have you forsaken me comes to mind.
Company member Greg Karate.
Phil LeBrie, a friend of Matthew, shook us up to the fence this morning. I broke down the minute I touched it. I feel such a strong kinship with this young man. On the way back, I made sure nobody saw me crying.
Lee Fondakowski.
Greg was crying on the way back. I couldn't bring myself to tears, but I felt the same way. I have an interview this afternoon with Aaron Kreifels. He's the boy who found Matthew out there at the fence. I don't think I'm up for it right now. I'll see if someone else can do it.
So I took off on my bicycle from my dorm on Wednesday around 5 o'clock. I just felt like going for a ride, So I went up to the top of Cactus Canyon. And I'm not super familiar with that area because, well, on my way down, I didn't really know which way I was going. I was just sort of picking the way to go, you know? Which, thinking about it now, I wonder if God wanted me to find him. So, I'm in some deep ass sand. There was this huge rock on the ground, and I just drilled it, went over the handlebars, and ended up on the ground. So, I sit up, start dusting myself off, and I'm looking around, and that's when I see something, which turned out to be Matthew. He was just lying on the ground by a fence, and, you know, I thought he was a scarecrow. I mean, I thought, you know, okay, Halloween's coming up, it's probably just a Halloween gag, so I didn't think much of it. So I picked up my bike, and I walked it over towards the fence, and it was a buck-type fence. But as I got closer, I noticed his hair. And that was a major key for me, telling that it was a human being, was his hair. I mean, I even saw the chest rising up and down, and I thought it was a mechanism. I mean, I really thought he was a dummy. But when I saw his hair, I knew it was a human being. So I ran to the closest house, and I called the police.
I responded to the call, Officer Reggie Flutie. When I got to the fence, at first, the only thing I could see was partially somebody's feet, and I got out of my vehicle and raced over. I'd seen what appeared to be a young man, 13, 14 years old, because he was so tiny lying on his back, and he was tied to a pole. He was covered in blood, and there was dry blood underneath him, and he was barely breathing. He was doing the best that he could, and I was going to breathe for him, but I couldn't get his mouth open. His mouth wouldn't open for me. He was covered in, like I said, partially dried blood and blood all over his head. The only place that he didn't have any blood on his face, was what appeared to be where he'd been crying down his face. His head was distorted. You know, it didn't look normal. It looked as if he had a real harsh head wound.
I was working the emergency room the night Matthew Shepard was brought in. I don't think that any of us can remember seeing a patient in that condition for a long time. Those of us who worked in big city hospitals have seen this, but we have some people here who have not worked in big city hospitals, and it's something you don't expect here. You expect it. You expect this kind of injuries from a car going down a hill at 80 miles an hour. You expect to see gross injuries from something like that, this horrendous, terrible thing. But you don't expect to see it from somebody doing it to another person. The ambulance report said it was a baby, so we knew. I did everything I could. I mean, if there was anything that I could have done, I would have done it, believe me. But there was nothing. I mean, I was screaming at the top of my lungs, trying to get something out of him, like, hey, wake up, hello! But he didn't move, he didn't flinch, he didn't anything.
He was tied to the fence. His hands were thumbs out in what we call cuffing position, the way we handcuff people. He was bound with a real thin white rope that went around the bottom of the pole about 4 inches up off the ground. He was tied extremely tight, so I used my boot knife and tried to slip it in between the rope and his wrist. I had to be extremely careful not to harm Matthew any further.
Well, you like to think that certainly it's somebody from out of town who comes through and beats somebody. I mean, things like this happens. I mean, crap happens, and it happens here in Laramie. But if there's been somebody who has been beaten repeatedly, this is something that affects us. I think that's a good word. It affects us.
He was bound so tight, I finally got my knife through there, and I'm sorry, we rolled him on his left side. When we did that, he quit breathing. Immediately, I put him back on his back, and that was just enough of an adjustment. I was able to cut him free there. I'd seen the EMS unit trying to get to the location. Once the ambulance got there, we put a neck collar on him, placed him on a backboard, and scooted him from underneath the fence. Then, Rob drove the ambulance to Ivinson's hospital emergency rooms.
Now, the strange thing is, 20 minutes before Matthew Shepard was brought in, Aaron McKinney was brought in by his girlfriend. Now, I guess he had gone to a bar fight later on back in town, so I'm working on Aaron, and then the ambulance comes in with Matthew. Now, at this point, I don't know that there's a connection at all. So I tell Aaron to wait, and I go to treat Matthew. Now, there's Aaron in one room in the ER, and then there's Matthew 2 doors down. Now, as soon as we saw Matthew, we knew that his care was beyond our capabilities. Called the neurosurgeon on Poudre Valley, and he was on the road in an hour and 15 minutes, I think.
They showed me a picture. Days later, I saw a picture of Matthew. I would have never recognized him.
Then 2 days later, I found out the connection, and I was very struck. There were 2 kids! They were both of my patients, and there were 2 kids. I worked on both of them, of their bodies, and for a brief moment, I wondered if this is how God feels when he looks down at us. His kids, our bodies, our souls. And then I felt a great deal of passion for the both of them.
This is John Peacock, Matthew's academic advisor.
Well, the news report started trickling out on Thursday, but no names were mentioned. The brutality of the crime was not mentioned. All that was mentioned was that there was a man, Laramie man, found beaten, out on the parade basically. Later on in the evening, they mentioned his name. It was like, that can't. That's not the Matthew Shepard I know. That's not my student. That's not this person who I've been meeting with.
I was in the coffee shop,
Romaine Patterson.
and somebody pulled me aside and said, I don't know much, but I heard there's been a young man who's been beaten in Laramie. And they say his name is Matthew Shepard, and he was like, do you think this could be our Matthew? And I was like, well, yeah, it sounds like it could be our Matthew. So I called up my sister Trish, and I'm like, tell me what you know. I'm just like, I need to know anything you know because I don't know anything.
So I'm talking to my sister on the phone, and that's when the whole story came up on Channel 5 News, and it was just like, ba-boom!
And the news reports kept rolling in. Young University of Wyoming student, his age, his description, it's like, oh my God.
And I felt sick to my stomach, just instantly sick to my stomach. I had to tell Romaine, yes, it was Matthew. It was your friend.
I'll tell you what's overwhelming.
Matt Galloway.
Friday morning, I first find out about it. I go to class, walk out, boom, in the branding iron. So I immediately drive down to the nearest newsstand to buy a Laramie boomerang because I want more details. Buy that, go home. Before I can even open the paper, my boss calls and he says,
Hey, did you hear about what happened?
I'm like, yes.
Was he in the bar on Tuesday night?
I go, yes he was.
Okay, you've got to get down to the bar right now. We need to discuss this, and we need to discuss what's going to go on.
By this time, I was starting to get upset, but still the severity wasn't out yet.
It was Thursday afternoon.
We were lunch with Stacy at Cooter Valley Hospital.
We got a call. Hey, we got a kid and it looks like he may be the victim of a hate crime, and we got some news people here asking questions. And so, we decided we needed a spokesperson. As CEO, I'll do that, and we'll try and gather as much information as we can.
And then I watched the 10 o'clock news that night, where they started talking about the nature and the seriousness of it.
I'm on the phone with Mickelson and he says,
We need to go to the arraignment so then we can identify these guys and make sure that these guys were in the bar.
so we go to the arraignment.
Our focus today turns to Laramie, Wyoming and the Albany County Courthouse, where Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson are being charged for the brutal beating of Matthew Shepard, a gay University of Wyoming student.
The arraignment was on Friday, right around lunchtime. So I said, I'm just going. I just took off. It was just down the street, so I walked a few blocks and I went. Has anybody told you about the arraignment? There was probably about 100 people from town, and probably as many news media by that point. A lot more of the details had come out. The fact that the perpetrators were kids themselves, local kids that anyone who's from around here has some relationship to, and what everyone was really, I think, waiting on pins and needles for was what would happen when the perpetrators walked in. And what happened? There was 200 people in the room at this point. They walked in their complete orange jumpsuits and their shackles, and you could have heard a pin drop. It was incredibly solemn. I mean, a lot of people were teary at this point. And then the judge came in, and he did a reading. There was a reading of the evidence that the prosecution has. It's just a statement of the facts. And the reading of the facts was,
The essential facts are that the defendants, Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson, met Mr. Shepard at the fireside bar. And after Mr. Shepard confided in them he was gay, subjects to see Mr. Shepard to leaving in their vehicle to a remote location. Upon arrival at said location, the subjects tied the victim to a buck fence, robbed him, tortured him, and beat him. Both subjects were later contacted by officers of the Laramie Police Department, who observed inside the cab of their pickup a credit card and a pair of patent black leather shoes belonging to the victim, Matthew Shepard.
I don't think that there was any person who was left in that courtroom who wasn't crying by the end of it. I mean, it lasted 5 minutes, but it kept getting more and more horrific, ending with
said subjects left the victim begging for his life.
Sergeant Hink.
How could this happen? I think a lot of people just don't understand, and even I don't really understand, how someone can do something like that. We have one of the most vocal populations of gay people in the state, and it's pretty much live and let live.
Laramie resident Jeffrey Lockwood.
My secret hope was that they were from somewhere else. That way you can create that distance. We don't grow children like that here. Well, it's pretty obvious that we do grow children like that here.
So that was the arraignment, and my response was pretty catatonic. Not sleeping, not eating. Don't leave me alone right now.
More and more details came in about the sheer brutality, motivation, how this happened. And then quite frankly, the media just ended. There was no time to reflect on it anymore.
Laramie, Wyoming, often called the gem city of the plains, is now at the eye of a storm. The cowboy state has its redneck and yahoos for sure, but there are no more bigots per capita in Wyoming than there are in New York, Florida, or California. The difference is that in Wyoming there are fewer places to blend in if you're anything other than prairie stock.
Aaron McKinney and his friend, Russell Henderson, came from the poor side of town. Both were from broken homes and as teenagers had had run-ins with the law. They lived in trailer parks and scratched out a living working at fast food restaurants and fixing roofs.
As a gay college student lay hospitalized in critical condition after a severe beating, this small city, which bills itself as Wyoming's hometown, wrestles with its attitude towards gay men.
People would like to think that what happened to Matthew was an exception to the rule, but was an extreme version of what happens in our schools on a daily basis.
It's a tough business, as Matthew Shepard knew, and as all his friends all know, to be gay in cowboy country.
It was huge. Yeah, it was herds, and we're talking hundreds of reporters, which makes a huge dent in this town's population. There's reporters everywhere. You search everywhere in the town, everywhere on campus. We're not used to that type of attention to begin with. We're not used to that type of exposure.
Tiffany Edwards, local reporter.
These people are like predators. Like this one journalist actually caught one of the judges in the bathroom and was like asking him questions, and the judge was like, "Excuse me, can I have some privacy?" And the journalist was like offended. This is not how journalism started, like the Gutenberg press, you know.
I'll tell you what, when hard copy came to take me, I taped them at the exact same time. I have every word I ever said on tape, so if they ever do anything funny, they better watch their ass.
Wyoming Governor Jim Geringer, a first-term Republican up for re-election.
I'm outraged and sickened by the heinous crime committed on Matthew Shepard. I extend my most heartfelt sympathies to the family.
Governor, you haven't pushed any hate crime legislation in the past.
I would like to urge the people of Wyoming overreacted in a way that gives one group special rights over others. We will wait and see if the beating and torture of Matthew Shepard was motivated by hate.
You've got the beginning of the story, where they've got the graphics in the background, and murder in Wyoming, and Wyoming's dripping out like it's got blood in it or something. And where you're thinking, what is this? This is sensationalism. And I'm here thinking, wait a minute. We have these guys in jail in less than a day. I think that's pretty damn good.
And for us to be more or less maligned.
Eileen and Gil Engen.
That we're not a good community. And we We are. The majority of the people here are good people.
We get bad apples every once in a while. And I think the gay community treats us as an advantage. It's a good time for us to exploit this.
Bill McKinney, father of one of the accused.
Had this been a heterosexual, these two boys decided to take on a rock, this never would have made national news. Now my son is guilty before he's even had a trial.
Look, I do think that the media actually made people accountable because they made people think. Because people were sitting at their homes, watching CNN, listening to Dan Rather, and watching TV and going, well, Jesus Christ, that's not how it is here. Well, how is it here?
Matthew Shepard, medical update, Saturday, October 10th at 3 p.m.
By this point, I looked out there, and where there had been 2 or 3 reporters, there were still 10 or 15 photographers, like 20 or 30 reporters, and 10 video cameras. The family just arrived. I had barely introduced myself to them. And I looked out there and I thought, my gosh, what am I going to do? Matthew Shepard was admitted into critical condition approximately 9:15 p.m. October 7th. When he arrived, he was unresponsive and breathing support was being provided. Matthew's major injuries upon arrival consisted of hypothermia and a fracture from behind his head to just in front of the right ear. This has caused bleeding on the brain as well as pressure on the brain. There were also several lacerations on his head, face, and neck. Matthew's temperature has fluctuated over the last 24 hours, ranging from 98 to 106 degrees. We have had difficulty controlling his temperature. Matthew's parents arrived at 7 p.m. October 9th and are now at his bedside. The following is a statement from them. First of all, we want to thank the American public for their kind thoughts about Matthew and their fond wishes for his speedy recovery. We appreciate your prayers and goodwill, and we know that there's something Matthew would appreciate too. We also have a special request for members of the media. Matthew is very much in need of his family at this time, and we ask that you respect our privacy as well as Matthew's so we can concentrate all our efforts, thoughts, and love on our son. Thank you very much.
Both Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson pled not guilty to charges. Their girlfriends, Chastity Paisley and Kristen Price, also pled not guilty after being charged as accessories after the fact. On our next trip, we spoke with Chief Investigating Officer Rob DeBree of the Albany County Sheriff's Department.
The thing that bothered me most was when I went down to Cougar Valley where Matthew was, and the thing that bothered me most was seeing him, touching him. As a homicide detective, you look at bodies, but this poor boy was sitting here, fighting for his life. I want it so by the book, you know?
I keep seeing that picture in my head when I found him.
Aaron
And it's not pleasant whatsoever. I don't want it to be there. I want to, get it out. And that's the unbelievable thing, is that, I happen to be the person who found him. But the big question with me, with my religion, is why did God want me to find him?
I know how to take care of myself, and I was irrationally terrified.
Catherine Conley.
So what that means is not letting my son walk the streets, seeing a truck do a U-turn and thinking it's coming after me, having to stop driving because I'm shaking so bad. And in fact, the pickup truck did not come after me, but my response was to have my heart in my mouth.
Ultimately, no matter how you dice it, I did have an opportunity.
Matt Galloway.
If I had amazing hindsight of 2020 to stop what occurred, and I keep thinking, what was I doing? I should have noticed. These guys should have been talking to this guy. I should have had my head down when I was washing those dishes for those 20 seconds. Things I could have done. What the hell was I thinking?
So you do a lot of studying, you spend hours and hours and hours studying. Talk to the officers, make sure they understand. Talk to the witnesses, and they always end with, I get this flash to see Matthew. I want it so tight. There was no way they were going to get out of this.
One of the things that happened when I got to the fence,
Reggie Flutie.
it was just such an overwhelming amount of blood. And we tried to wear protective gloves, but we had a real cheap sheriff at the time, and he bought us crappy gloves, You put them on, and you put them on, and they just kept breaking. So finally, you just run out of gloves, So you figured, don't hesitate. That's what your mind tells you all the time. Don't hesitate. So you keep moving, and you try to help Matthew, and you find an airway, and that's just what you do,
The thing I wasn't telling you before is that Reggie is my daughter.
Marge Murray.
And when she told me that she wanted to be a police officer, well, I thought there couldn't be a better choice for her. She could handle whatever came her way.
Probably a day and a half later, the hospital called me and they told me that Matthew had HIV. And the doctor said, "You've been exposed and you've had a bad exposure." Because you see, I've been building a lean-to for my llamas, and my hand had a bunch of open cuts on them, so I was kind of screwed, you know, and you think, oh shoot, you know?
Would you like to talk about losing sleep?
So I said to the doctor, okay, what do I do? And they said, get up here. So I got up there and we started the ATZ drugs immediately.
Now, they tell me that that's a type of medicine that if administered 36 hours after you've been exposed, then it can stop your getting the disease.
That is a mean, nasty medicine. Mean. I've lost 10 pounds and a lot of my hair. Yeah.
And quite frankly, I just wanted to lash out at somebody, not Matthew. Please understand that not one of us was mad at Matthew, but we maybe wanted to squeeze McKenny's head off, and I think about Henderson, two absolute human beings, caused so much grief for so many people. It was just terrible for my whole family, but most of all, her and her children.
I think it brought home to my girls what their mom does for a living.
You know what I'm gonna tell you now, Reggie?
And my parents told me, you know, they both said the same damn thing.
You're quitting this damn job.
And it's just a parent thing, you know, because they're terribly proud of you, because you do a good job, whether it's handling a drunk or handling a case like this, but you're you know, and they don't want you getting hurt.
Look, there's a right way, there's a wrong way, and then there's Reggie's way.
So finally I said, oh, for God's sakes, lighten up, Francis!
You are so stubborn!
They say I'm stubborn, and I don't believe them. And I just think, you know, I've heard your opinion, now here's mine. I'm 39 years old, you know? What are you gonna do, spank me?
Reggie, don't give me any ideas!
It looks pretty funny, you know? What can they say?
I just hope she doesn't go before me. I couldn't handle that.
University of Wyoming President Philip Dubois.
This is a young person who read my statement on the Denver Post story and sent an email to me directly and said,
you and the straight people of Laramie, Wyoming are guilty of the beating of Matthew Shepard, just as the Germans who look the other way are guilty of the deaths of the Jews, the gypsies, and the homosexuals. You've taught your straight children to hate their gay and lesbian brothers and sisters. And unless and until you acknowledge that Matthew's death was not just a random occurrence and not just the work of a couple random crazies, you have Matthew's blood on your hands.
And I can't begin to tell you what that does to you. I mean, it's not like you can know what I'm thinking. It's not like you know what this has done to me, or to my family, or to my community.
That first week alone, vigils for Matthew Shepard were held in Laramie, Denver, Fort Collins, and Colorado Springs. Soon after, in Detroit, Chicago, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Nashville, Minneapolis, and Portland, Maine, among others. And in Los Angeles, 5,000 people gathered. And in New York City, a political rally ended in civil disobedience and hundreds of arrests. And the Poudre Valley Hospital website received close to 1 million visitors from across the country and around the world, all expressing their hope for Matthew's recovery.
9 a.m. today, Matthew Shepard remains in critical condition. The family would like to continue to emphasize that the media respect their privacy. The family also wants to thank the American public for their kind thoughts and concern for Matthew.
There are certain things when I sit in church.
Jedediah ass shorts.
And the Reverend will tell you flat out he doesn't agree with homosexuality. And I don't know. I feel like right now I'm going through changes. I'm still learning about myself and, you know, I don't know enough about certain things to make a decision that says homosexuality is right when you've been raised your whole life that's wrong. And right now I'll say that I don't agree with it. Yeah, that I don't agree with it. But maybe that's just because I couldn't do it. speaking in religious terms, I don't think that's how God intended it to happen. But I don't hate homosexuals, and I mean, that's not going to be getting in the way between me and the other person at all.
Well, it's preached in schools that being gay is okay and yada yada yada.
Conrad Miller.
And if my kids were to ask me, I'd set them down and I'd say, this is what gay people do, this is what animals do. Okay, and I'd tell them, this is the lifestyle, this is what they do. And I'd say, this is why I believe it's wrong.
There's more gay people in Laramie than what you think.
Murdoch.
It doesn't bother anybody, you know, 'cause most of them that are gay or lesbian, they know damn well who to talk to. If you step out of line, you're asking for it. Some people are saying he made a pass at them. You don't pick up regular people. No, I'm not excusing the boy's actions, but it did make me feel better, you know, because it's partially Matthew Shepard's fault and partially the guys who did it fault. You know, maybe it's 50-50.
Yes, as a lesbian, I was more concerned for my safety.
Zachy Salmon.
I think we all were. And I think it's because somewhere inside we all know it can happen to any of us anytime. I mean, I'd be afraid to walk down the street and display any sort of physical affection for my partner. I mean, you don't do that here in Laramie.
Here's the whole idea. You leave me alone, I leave you alone.
Jonas Sloanaker.
And it's even so in Western literature, you know? Live and let live. That is such crap. I tell my friends that. Even my gay friends bring it up sometimes, like, this is such crap, you know? And basically what it boils down to is, if I don't tell him a fag, then you won't beat the crap out of me. I mean, what's so great about that? That's a great philosophy.
We went to the candle vigil,
Zabida Ula.
and it was so good to be with people who felt like crap. I just kept feeling like I don't deserve to feel this bad, you know? And then someone got up there and he said, blah, 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 blah. And then he said, well, I'm saying it wrong, but basically he said, come on guys, let's show the world that Laramie is not this kind of a town. But it is this kind of a town. If it wasn't this kind of a town, then why would it happen here? You know what I mean? Like, that's a lie. Because it happened here. So how could it not be a town where this kind of thing happens? That's just totally like looking at an Escher painting and getting all confused. That's like totally circular logic. Like, how can you even say that? And we have to mourn this. And we have to be sad that we live in a town, a state, a country where stuff like this happens. These people are trying to distance themselves from this crime, but we have to own it. We all have to own it. We are like this. We are like this. We are like this.
I was at the Fireside Bar one afternoon and I ran into two friends of Aaron McKinney, Shannon and Jen. You knew Aaron well, right?
Yeah, we both did. When I first found out, I thought it was really awful. I don't know if Aaron was high or if he was coming down or what. But Matthew, he had money. Hell, he had better clothes than I did. Matthew was a little rich bitch.
You shouldn't call him a rich bitch, though. It's not right.
Well, I'm not saying that he's a bad guy either, you know, because he was just in the wrong place, wrong time, said the wrong things, and I don't know. I won't lie to you. There's been some times I've been all messed up on meth and thought about going out and robbing. I mean, I never did, but yeah, I was there. Easy money.
Aaron's done that thing before. They've both done it. I remember one time they went to Cheyenne to go do it and came back with probably $300. I don't know if they ever chose like gay people as their particular targets, but anyone who had money and they could outnumber or overpower was fair game.
Do you think that there was any homophobia at all involved in this that contributed to some of it?
Probably. It probably would have pissed him off that Matthew was gay because he didn't seem to like the gay people I'd seen him interact with. He was fine as long as it didn't hit on him, as long as it didn't come up.
As long as they weren't doing it in front of him.
Do you get the impression that he knew other gay people?
Well, I'm sure he knew other gay people. He worked up at that KFC. And there were a couple of people up there that... yeah. And I'm not saying it's bad or anything, because I don't know. Half the people I know here in Laramie are gay.
What would you guys say to Aaron if you saw him right now?
First of all, I'd ask if he'd do any more tweak.
If I saw Aaron now, I'd be like, man, why'd you screw up like that? But I'd want to make sure he's doing good in there. I'm sure he is, though. I'd probably just want to hang out with him.
Smoke a bowl with him.
I bet he wants one so bad.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, you guys both went to Laramie High?
Yeah, can't you tell? We're a product of our society.
On a day that is traditionally given over to nothing more profound than collegiate exuberance and the fortunes of the University of Wyoming's football team, this community on the High Plains had a different kind of homecoming Saturday, as many searched their souls in wake of a vicious, apparent anti-gay hate crime.
University President Philip Dubois.
This was homecoming weekend, and there were a lot of people in town. And there was a homecoming parade that was scheduled. And all the students tagged on behind it. Well, you know, the banners supporting Matt. And everybody was wearing the armbands that the students created.
I live in the center of town, Harry Woods, and my apartment has windows on two opposite sides. One goes north and one goes south. Now, on the day of the parade, I had a cast on my leg because of a fall. So I was really disappointed because I wanted to march with the others outside, but I couldn't. And it was just, I'm 52 years old and I'm gay. I've lived here for many years and I've seen a lot. And I was very moved when I saw the tag at the end of the parade, about 100 people marching for Matthew Shepard. So then the parade made a U-turn down the street and I went to my other window to watch.
I was right at the front, there where they were holding the banner for Matthew, and let me tell you, I've never had goosebumps so long in my life. It was incredible. Just a mass of people, families, mothers holding these 6-year-old kids and tying these armbands around these 6-year-old kids. It was just amazing. It was absolutely one of the most beautiful things I've ever done in my life.
So about 10 minutes went by, and sure enough, the parade came down the other street. And then I saw the most incredible thing. The amount of people marching for Matthew Shepard had grown 5 times. There were at least 500 people. 500! Can you imagine? If people kept joining in. And I thought, thank God I got to see this in my lifetime. And my second thought was, thank you, Matthew.
Been all that involved per se. My husband is a highway patrolman, so that's really the only way I've known about it. Now, when I first found out, I just thought it was horrible. I can't. Nobody deserves that. I don't care who you are. But the other thing that was not brought out, at the same time this happened, that patrolman was killed and there was nothing. Nothing. They didn't say anything about the old man who killed him. He was driving down the road and he shouldn't have been driving and he killed him. It was just a little piece in the paper and we lost one of our guys. You know, my husband worked with him. This man was brand new to the force, but he was one of ours and it was just a little piece in the paper. And a lot of it is my feeling that the media is portraying Matthew Shepard as a saint and making him a martyr. And I don't think he was. I don't think he was that pure. Now, I didn't know him, but there's just so many things about him that I found out, and it's scary, you know, about his character and his spreading AIDS and a few other things. And being the kind of person he was just a barfly, you know. And I think he pushed himself around. I think you flaunted it. Everyone's got problems, but why they exemplified them, I'll never know. What's the difference if you're gay? A hate crime is a hate crime. If you murder somebody, you hate them. It is nothing to do with whether you're gay or a prostitute or whatever. I don't understand. I don't understand.
Company member Lee Fonikowski.
This is one of our last days on our second trip to Laramie. Andy and I have been conducting interviews non-stop and we're exhausted.
We are to meet Father Roger at 7:30 in the morning. I was wishing we could skip it all together, but we had to follow through to the end. So, here we go. 2 queers and a Catholic priest.
Matthew Shepard has served us well. You realize that? He has served us well. And I do not mean to condemn Matthew's perfection, but I cannot think of anybody who has done more for this community than Matthew Shepard. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say I was this bold-faced guy with no fear. I was very scared and I was very vocal in this community when this happened. I was like, should we call the bishop and ask him to do permission for the vigil? And then I thought, hell no, I'm not going to do that. Because his permission doesn't make it correct. I'm not knocking bishops, but what is correct is correct. And you people are just here on search, though. I'll do this for you. I will trust that if you're at a play of this, that you say it right. I think you have the responsibility to do that. And don't make matters worse. Think violence what they did to Matthew? They did do violence to Matthew. But you realize every time that you're called a fag or a les or whatever.
Or a dyke.
Dyke. Yes, a dyke. Do you realize that is violence? That is the very seed of violence. And I would resent it immensely if you use anything I said to somehow cultivate that kind of violence. You need to know that.
Thank you, Father, for saying that.
Just deal with what's true. You know what's true. You need to do your best to say it correct.
Andrew Gomez.
I was in there. I was in jail with Aaron over Christmas. Got thrown in over December. Assault and battery, 2 counts. I don't want to talk about it. We were sitting there, trying to eat our Christmas dinner, you know, stuffing, my little roll, my bread, and whatnot. And I asked her. I was like, hey, homie, tell me something. Tell me something, please. Why did you... I'm trying to think of how I word this. I was like, why did you kill that queer if you're destined to be a queer yourself later? I mean, think about it. Don't make any sense. You're either gonna give in all the time or you're gonna die. I mean, think about it. It don't make any sense. And you know what he said to me? Honest to God, this is what he goes. He tried to grab my junk. Man, he is dumb. He don't even act like it was nothing.
Hello?
Reverend,
Yes, hello.
this is Amanda Kronig from the theater group.
I don't think I want to talk to anyone about any of this incident. I'm somewhat involved, and I just don't think...
Yes, I completely understand, and I don't blame you. You know, I went to your service on Sunday.
You were at service on Sunday?
Yes, I was.
This Sunday?
Yes, this past Sunday.
I see. Well, I'm not afraid to be controversial or to speak my mind, but that's not necessarily the views of my congregation, per se. Now, like I said, I'm somewhat involved. The people in the case, well, the girlfriend of the accused, she's a member of this congregation, and one of the accused is visited. Now, as for those 2, the accused, they have forfeited their lives. We've been after the 2 I've mentioned for ages, trying to get them to live right, do right. Now, one boy is on suicide watch, and I work with him until they put him in the chair and turn on the juice. I'll work for his salvation. Now, I think they deserve the death penalty. I'll try to handle them spiritually.
Right. I understand.
Now, as for the victim, I know that their lifestyle is legal and all, but I'll tell you one thing. I hope that as Matthew Shepard was tied to that fence, he had a moment to reflect on a time when someone had spoken the word of the Lord to him, and that before he slipped into a coma, he had the time to reflect on his lifestyle.
Thank you, Reverend. I appreciate your speaking with me.
About 11:30 that night, Margot, our chief operating officer, called. Hey, his blood pressure began to drop. So I said, well, let's just wait and see. About 10 after he called, he just died. So I quick got dressed and came in and went straight to the ICU where the family was, and Judy stood up and she put her arms around me and I put my arms around her, and we stood there, honestly, for about 10 minutes, because what else do you do? Then we had to talk about the stuff that you just... Dennis, it's public knowledge now. And I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna tell the whole world that this has happened. Because it was clear to us by this point, it was the world. It was the whole world. So, Judy told me what she wanted me to say, and I went out at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Matthew Shepard, medical update for 4:30 a.m., Monday, October 12th.
At 12 midnight on Monday, October 12th, Matthew Shepard's blood pressure began to drop. We immediately notified his family, who were already at the hospital. At 12:53 a.m., Matthew Shepard died. His family was at his bedside. The family did release the following statement. The family again asked me to express their sincerest gratitude to the entire world for their overwhelming response for their son. The family was grateful that they did not have to make a decision regarding whether or not to continue life support for their son. Like a good son, he was caring to the end and removed guilt or stress from the family. He came into the world premature and left the world premature. Matthew's mother said, "Go home. Give your kids a hug and don't let a day go by without telling them you love them." And I don't know how it happened. I lost it on national television. But, you know, we've been up for like 72 hours and gone to sleep for about half an hour, and maybe I was just way... In a moment of complete brain deadness while I was out there reading that statement, I thought about my own 4 daughters and go home and hug your kids and, oh, she doesn't have her kid anymore. There I am, and I'm thinking, this is so lame. Then we started to get to the point where people started sending us letters and emails, and most of them were generally very kind, but I did get this one. This one guy wrote me and he said, "Do you cry like a baby on TV for all your patients, or just the faggots?" And let me tell you, homosexuality is not a lifestyle with which I agree, but I think with being thrown into this, I didn't understand the magnitude with which some people hate. And out of all the letters, there were maybe 2 or 3 that were like that. Most of them were, "Thank you for your caring compassion," and Matthew did get caring compassion since the moment he got here, damn it.
I spoke with Doc today, and I told him we would soon be coming back for the upcoming trials of Russell Henderson and Eric McKinney. And this is what he had to say.
If they put those 2 boys to death, that would defeat everything Matt would be thinking about on there. Because Matt would not want to see those 2 die. He'd want to leave them with hope. H-O-P-E. It's like the whole world hoped that Matt would survive. The whole thing, you see? The whole thing. Ropes around hope. H-O-P-E. On the day of the funeral, It was snowing, so big, bad, huge, wet snowflakes. And there were thousands of people in black with umbrellas everywhere. And there were two churches, one for immediate family, invited guests, people of that nature, and then one church for anybody who just wanted to be there. And still hundreds of people. And there was this big park next to the church, and this park was full.
The liturgy today is an Easter liturgy. It finds its meaning in the resurrection. The service invites your full participation. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray.
And I guess it was like the worst storm that they ever had.
Tiffany Edwards.
Like the trees fell down and the power went out because of it. And I just thought, it's like the forces of the universe at work, you know. Whatever higher power blows storms. Well, they were blowing this one.
Let us pray to our Lord Jesus Christ, who said, I am the resurrection and the life. We pray to the Lord.
Hear us,
Lord. Lord.
My most striking memory from the funeral.
Harry Drake, Pastor Sergeant.
The scene the Reverend Fred Phelps. That scene go up in the park.
Do you believe the Bible? Do you believe that you're supposed to separate the precious from the vile? You don't believe that part of the Bible, do you? You stand over here ignorant to the fact that the Bible, 2 times in every verse, it talks about God's love, it talks about God's hate.
A bunch of high school kids at Gunner early came over and started yelling at some of the people at the protest. The Fred Phelps people. And across the street, there were people lining up for the funeral. Well, I remember a guy. I remember this skinhead coming over. He was just leather spikes everywhere. And he came over from across the street where the crowd was. And I just thought, oh, this is going to be a really ugly confrontation. But instead, he came over and started leading them in amazing grace.
We wouldn't be here if this was just another murder the state was going to deal with. The state deals with hundreds of murders every single day. But this murder is different because the faggots are bringing us out here trying to make Matthew Shepard into a poster boy for the gay lifestyle. And we're going to answer to it. It's just that simple.
6 months later, the company returned to Laramie for the trial of Russell Henderson, the first of the 2 perpetrators. It was to be a capital murder trial. When we arrived at the Albany County Courthouse, Fred Phelps was already there.
You don't like that attribute of God.
But so was Romaine Patterson.
Well, we love that attribute of God, and we're going to preach it because God's hatred is pure. It's determination. It's determination that He's going to send some people to hell. That's God's hatred.
After seeing Fred Phelps protesting at Matthew's funeral, and then finding out he's coming to Laramie for the trial of Russell Henderson, I decided that somebody needs to stand toe-to-toe with this guy and show the differences. And I think at times like this, when we're talking hatred as much as the nation is right now, that somebody needs to show that there's a better way of dealing with this kind of hatred. So, our idea is to dress up as angels, so we've designed an angel outfit and our wings are huge. They're like big-ass wings. There'll be 10 to 20 of us that are angels. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna encircle Phelps, and because of our big wings, we're gonna completely block him. So, this big-ass band of angels comes and we don't say a dang word. We just turn our backs to him and stand there. And we are a group of people bringing forth a message of peace, love, and compassion. And we're calling it angel action. Yeah, this 21-year-old little lesbian is ready to walk the line with him.
When those old preachers laid their
And I knew that my angels were going to be taking the brunt for everything he had to yell and say. I mean, we were going to be blocking his view, and he was going to be pissed off to all hell. So, I went out, and I bought all of my angels' earplugs.
The court is in session.
Romaine Patterson's sister, Trish Steger.
As soon as they started jury selection, you know, everybody was pretty much shocked with, I don't want to be on this trial, I hope they don't call me, or, oh God, I've been called, how do I get off? Wanting to get as far away from it as they could. Very fearful that they were going to have to be a part of that jury. And then I heard Henderson had to sit in the courtroom when they questioned the prospective jurors. And one of the questions that they ask is, would you be willing to put this person to death? And I understand that a lot of the comments were, yes, I would.
Yes, absolutely, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
No problem.
Yep.
Well, can you imagine hearing that? I mean, juror after juror after juror.
You entered a not guilty plea earlier, Mr. Henderson, but I understand you wish to change that. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that the recommended sentence here is 2 life sentences?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that those may run concurrently or they may run consecutively?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Henderson, I will now ask how you wish to plead. Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Before the court decides whether the sentences will be concurrent or consecutive, I understand that there are sentences made by at least one individual.
This is an excerpt from a statement made by the court by Lucy Thompson.
As the person who raised Russell, along with my family, we have written the following statement. Our hearts ache for the pain and suffering that the shepherds have went through. We've prayed for your family since the very beginning. Many times throughout the day, I have thought about Matt, and you will continue to be in our thoughts and prayers as we know your pain will never go away. You've shown such mercy in allowing us to have this plea, and we are so grateful that you have given us all the opportunity to live. Your Honor, we as a family hope that as you sentence Russell, you will do it concurrently, 2 life terms. For the Russell we know and love, we humbly plead your honor not to take Russell completely out of our lives forever.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson, you have a constitutional right to make a statement if you would like to do so. Is there anything you would like to say? Yes, Your Honor. Mr. and Mrs. Shepard, there's not a moment that goes by that I don't think about what happened that night. And I know what I did was very wrong. I'm very sorry. I regret greatly for what I've done. And I hope that one day you will be able to find it in your hearts to forgive me. Your Honor, I know what I did was very wrong, and I'm very sorry. But I'm ready to pay my debt for what I've done. Mr. Henderson, you drove the vehicle that took Matthew Shepard to his death. You bound him to that fence in order that he might be more savagely beaten, in order that he might not escape to tell his tale. You left him out there for 18 hours, knowing full well that he was there. Perhaps having an opportunity to save his life, and you did nothing. Mr. Henderson, this court does not believe you feel any true remorse for your part in this matter, and I wonder whether you fully realize the gravity of what you've done. The court finds it appropriate. Therefore, that sentence be ordered as follows. As to count 3, that being felony murder with robbery, you are to serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. On count 1, kidnapping, that you serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. Sentencing for count 1 to run consecutive to sentencing for count 3.
After the hearing, we spoke with Russell Henderson's Mormon home teacher.
I've known Russell's family for 38 years. Russell's only 21, so I've known him his entire life. I ordained Russell a priest of the Mormon church. So when this happened, you can imagine disbelief. After the sentencing, the church held the disciplinary council, and the result of that meeting was that Russell should be excommunicated from the church. What this means is that your name is taken off the church records, so you just disappear. Russell's reaction was not positive to this. It hurt Russell, and it had hurt him at this point to realize how serious a transgression he had committed. But I will not desert Russell. That is a matter of my religion and my relationship with the family.
Before we left Laramie, we met again with Rebecca Hilliker in the theater department. She's producing Angels in America this year at the university.
I think that's the focus the university has taken, is that we have a lot of work to do. We have an obligation to find ways to reach our students, and the question is, how do we reach them? How do we reach a whole state where there's some really deep-seated hostility towards gays? How do we reach them? This is just the beginning. And guess who's auditioning for the leads?
My parents.
Jedediah Schultz.
My parents were like, solo plays everything this year at school. And I was like, it's in America. And I told them the whole list of plays. And they're like, it's in America. Is that's senior in high school? That play in high school. And I was like, yeah. And we got in this huge argument. And the best thing I knew I had on them, that they just did me a performance in Macbeth on stage, like I murdered like a little kid, Macduff, and these two other guys. And she goes, well, homosexuality is a sin. She kept saying that. I told her. And I said, Mom, I just played a murder tonight, and you didn't see the problem with that. I've never prepared myself this much for an audition in my life. Never ever, not even close.
Not having to deal with that much gay society here, Larry.
Detective Sergeant Rob Debris.
And, well, once we started working on the case and actually talking to people that were gay and finding out what their underlying fears were, well, that sort of hit home. This is America. You don't have the right to feel that fear. And there are going to be some people who hold on to old ideals, and that was probably one of them 14 months ago. But I'm not going to have it. I'm not going to listen to it. And if they don't like my views on it, fine. The door goes both ways. I already lost a couple of buddies, but I don't care. I feel more comfortable, and I can sleep at night.
Well, you're tested every 3 months.
Officer Reggie Flutie.
And I was able to get the DNA work done, and so they got me to Fort Collins, drew my blood there, and flew to Michigan, and they were able to do all the DNA work there, which was a week later. I knew I was negative for good.
I'll tell you, we were all on our knees saying Hail Marys.
You're just elated, you think, thank God.
So what's the first thing she does?
I stuck my tongue right in my husband's mouth. I was just happy, you're just so happy, and you think, yeah, I hope I did this service well. You think, I hope I did it with some kind of integrity, and so you're just really happy, and my daughter's just bawled.
They were so happy.
And the force?
Oh boy.
We went out and got hammered.
Hammered!
Everybody bought me drinks too, it was great, and we all hugged and cried, and
I kissed everybody who walked through that door.
Reggie, they don't need to know that.
I didn't care if they were male or female, they each got a kiss on the lips.
Now what part of what I just said did you not understand?
Oh, get over it, Mom.
Almost a year to the day that Matthew Shepard was murdered, the trial for Aaron James McKinney was set to begin.
Probably the question that most of you have in your mind is, how did McKinney get to it?
Cal Ruta, prosecuting attorney.
And it's the decision of the county attorney's office that will definitely be a death penalty case.
Part of me wants McKinney to get it, and I'm not proud of that. Part of me was on and off and on again. I can't say what I would do. I'm too personally involved.
Oh, I believe in the death penalty 100%. I want to make sure that guy's ass dies. This is one instance where I truly believe with all my heart, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
Now, I don't know about the death penalty, but I don't ever want to see those two walk out of Rollins Penitentiary. I'll pay my nickel, or my little percentage of tax, a nickel a day, to make sure that his ass stays in there and never sees society again, and definitely never comes into my bar again.
I don't believe in the death penalty. It's too much for me. I don't believe one person should be killed as redemption for his having killed another. Two wrongs don't make a right.
How can I protest if the Shepherds want McKinney dead? I just can't interfere in that, but on a personal level, I knew Aaron in grade school. We never called him Aaron, he was called AJ, and how could I put AJ McKinney to death?
I think right now our most important teachers must be Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney. They have peer teachers. What have they learned? How did we, as a society, teach them that? Now, I don't think a lot of people will let them be their teachers, but I think it'd be great if the judge said, in addition to your sentence, you must tell your story. You must tell your story.
All rise, the state of Wyoming versus Aaron James McKinney, docket 6381. The Honorable Barton R. Voigt presiding. The court is in session.
During the trial,
My name is Rob Duty, Sergeant for
the
the
prosecution
Sheriff's
planned
Office.
to take
You're not
recordings
to
of
enter
his
inside.
confession.
Anything you say can and may be used against you in the court of law.
The following is an excerpt of that
Okay,
confession.
so you and Russ, you go to the fireside, and you're at the fireside by yourselves, right?
Yeah.
Okay, where do you go after you leave the fireside?
Some kid wanted to ride home.
What do you look like?
Like a queer. Just a queer dude.
He looks like a queer?
Yeah, like a fag, you know?
Okay, how did you meet him?
He wanted to ride home, and I just thought, okay, this dude's drunk. Let's just take him home.
Okay, when did you and Russ talk about jacking him up?
We talked about it at the bar.
Okay, what happened next?
Well, we got him out past Walmart. We got over there, and he starts grabbing my leg, grabbing my genitals. I was like, look, man, I'm not a faggot. If you touch me again, you're gonna get it. I don't know what the hell he was trying to do, but I beat him up pretty bad. He could kill him.
What'd you beat him up with?
Blacked out. My fist, my pistol, the butt of the gun. Wonder what would happen to me. I had some beers, you know. It's like I could see what was going on, but I don't know. It's like somebody else is doing it.
Okay, what was the first thing that he said he did that made you hit him?
Oh, he put his hand on my leg, slid it like he was going to grab my junk.
When that defense team argued that McKinney did what he did because Matthew tried to make a pass at him, I just wanted to vomit because that's like saying it's okay. It's like the Twinkie defense. When that guy killed Harvey Milk and Moscone, it's the same thing.
As much as a
Part of me didn't want the defense of them saying that it was a gay bashing or that it was gay panic. Part of me is really grateful because I was really scared that in the trial they're going to try to say that it was about drugs or that it was a robbery, but when they used the term gay panic as their defense, I felt this is good. If nothing else, the truth will be told. The truth is coming out.
Did he ever try to defend himself or hit you back?
Yeah, he tried his little swings or whatever, but they weren't very effective.
Okay, how many times did you hit him inside the truck before you stopped where you left him?
I'd say him 2 or 3 times, probably 3 times with my fist, about 60 times with the pistol.
Did he ask you to stop?
Yeah, he was getting the crap kicked out of him.
What did he say?
After he asked me to stop, most all he was doing was screaming.
So Russ dragged him over the fence, I'm assuming, and tied him up?
Something like that. All I remember is Russ was laughing at first, but then he got pretty scared.
Was Matthew conscious when you and Russ tied him up?
Yeah, I told him to turn around and not look at my license plate number because I was scared to tell the police. Then I asked him what it was. He read it, and that's why I hit him a few more times.
So, just to be sure, you obviously don't like gay people?
No, I don't.
You say you hate them?
I don't hate them, but when they like come on me and stuff like that, I get pretty aggravated.
Do you threaten you?
The gay dude?
Yeah.
Not really.
Okay. Can you answer me one more thing? Why do you take his shoes?
I don't know. Now I'll never get to see my son again.
You'll probably go to court sometime today.
Today? So I'll just go there and plead guilty or not guilty today?
No. You're going to be arraigned today.
He is going to die for sure.
There's no doubt that Mr. Shepard is going to die.
So, what are they going to give me? 25 years to life or just a death penalty and get it over with?
That's not our job. That's the judge and the jury's job. Has the jury reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. We, the jury, impaneled to try the above entitled case, unanimously find as follows. As for the charge of kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As for the charge of aggravated robbery, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of first-degree felony murder, kidnapping, you find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of first-degree felony murder, robbery, you find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of first-degree premeditated murder, you find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, not guilty. As to the lesser included offense of second-degree felony murder, you find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty.
Aaron McKinney was found guilty of felony murder, which means the jury can give him a death penalty. That evening, Judy and Dennis Shepard were approached by McKinney's defense team, who pled for their client's life. The prosecution indicated that they would defer to the family's wishes as to whether or not to pursue the death penalty. The following morning, Dennis Shepard made a statement to the court. Here is some of what he said.
My son Matthew did not look like a winner. He was rather uncoordinated, and he wore braces from the age of 13 until the day he died. However, in his all too brief life, he proved that he was a winner. On October 6, 1998, he tried to show the world that he could win again. On October 12th, 1998, my firstborn son, my hero, lost. On October 12th, 1998, my firstborn son, my hero, died 50 days before his 22nd birthday. I keep asking myself the same questions I did when I first saw him in the hospital. What would he have become? How could he have changed his piece of the world for the better? Matt officially died in a hospital in Fort Collins, Colorado. He actually died on the outskirts of Laramie, tied to a fence. You, Mr. McKinney, with your friend, Mr. Henderson, left him there by himself. But he wasn't alone. He had his lifelong friends with him. Friends that he had grown up with. Probably wondering who these friends were. First, he had the beautiful night sky and the same stars and moon that we used to see through a telescope. Then he had the daylight and the sun to shine on him. Through it all, he was breathing in the scent of the pine trees from the snowy range. He heard the wind, ever-present Wyoming wind, for the last time. He had one more friend with him. He had God. And I feel better knowing that he wasn't alone. Matt's beating, hospitalization, and funeral focused worldwide attention on hate. Good is coming out of evil. People have said enough is enough. I miss my son, but I am proud to be able to say that he is my son. Judy has been quoted as being against the death penalty. It has been stated that Matt was also against the death penalty. Both of these statements are false. Matt believed that there were crimes and incidents that justified the death penalty. I too believe in the death penalty. I would like nothing better than to see you die, Mr. McKinney. However, now is the time to begin the healing process, to show mercy to someone who refused to show any mercy. Mr. McKinney, I'm going to grant you life, as hard as it is for me to do so because of Matthew. Every time you celebrate a birthday, a Christmas, the 4th of July, remember that Matt isn't. Every time you wake up in your prison cell, remember that you had the opportunity and the ability to change your actions that night. You robbed me of something very precious, and I will never forgive you for that. Mr. McKinney, I give you life in the memory of one who no longer lives. May you have a long life, and may you thank Matthew every day for it.
Everybody had tears in their eyes, and you're just so thankful. And Mr. Shepherd was crying, and that got me bawling, and everybody just.
This has been all we've lived and breathed for a year, daily. This has been my case daily. Now it's over.
Maybe now we can go on and we can quit getting stuck, you know?
You know, it just hit me today, the minute I got out of the courthouse, that the reason that God wanted me to find him was for he didn't have to die out there all alone, you know? And if I hadn't have come along, someone would have found him for a couple of weeks at least. So it makes me feel really good that he didn't have to die out there alone.
I'm just glad it's over. I really am. Testifying in this trial has been one of the hardest things I've ever done. And don't get me wrong, I love the stage. I really do. I love it. But it's tricky because basically what you have is lawyers pushing from this side of the land, funneling it over to the jury. So what you have to do is establish a funneling system. And that's tough for me because I'm a natural conversationalist. So it's only natural instinct when someone asks you a question, you look to make eye contact. But that's kind of tough when you literally have to scoot over, change your position, in effect, funnel over to the jury. But I was able to do that several times over the course of my testimony.
On our last trip, I had the good fortune of seeing Jedediah Stoltz play the role of Prior in Angels of America. After a performance, we spoke.
I never really got myself personally involved in the Matthew Shepard thing. It didn't seem real. It just seemed way thrown out of proportion. Matthew Shepard was just a name instead of an individual. I don't know, it's weird. It's so weird, man. I just feel bad, you know, for all the stuff I said, for the person I used to be. That's why I want to go back and hear all those interviews when I said all that stuff. I just can't believe I ever said all that stuff about homosexuals, you know? Like, how did I ever let that stuff make me think they were different from me?
This is Romaine Patterson.
Well, a year ago, I wanted to be a rock star. That was the goal, and well, that's obviously changed to the fact that throughout the past year, I've really realized my role in taking my part. And so, instead of going to school to be in music, I'm going to school for communications and political science, you know, because I have a career in political activism. Actually, I just recently found out that I'm going to be honored in Washington, D.C. by the Anti-Defamation League, and whenever I think of the angels or any of that speaking I've done, Matthew gave me. Matthew's like guiding this little path with this little light for me to walk down, and every time we get to like a door, he opens it, and he's just like, okay, next step. And so if I get to be a rock star on the side, okay.
This is Jonas Sloanaker.
Change is not an easy thing, and I don't think people are up to it. They got what they wanted. Those two boys got what they deserved, and we look at it. Justice has been served. The OK Corral. We shot down the buildings. We sent the prostitutes on the trains. The town's cleaned up, and we can stop talking about it. You know, it's been a year since Matthew Shepard died, and they haven't passed anything in Wyoming. At a state level, any town, nobody anywhere has passed any kind of laws. Anti-discrimination laws, hate crime legislation, nobody anywhere has passed anything. And what's to come of it? What's to come of it? It's concrete or lasting.
We all said we would meet again, one last time at the bench.
I've been up to that site. in my limousine. I remembered to myself when he and I drove around, and he said, Laramie sparkles, doesn't it? And where he was up there, if you sit exactly where he was up there, Laramie sparkles from there, with a low-lying cloud. It's the blue lights bouncing off the airport, and it goes right over the whole city. I mean, it blows you away to think Matt was right there when he died. And I can just picture, I can just imagine the last thing on this earth that he saw was the sparkling lights.
We've spent the last 2 days packing a year's worth of materials and saying our goodbyes. We've been here 6 times and conducted over 200 interviews. Jedediah cried when he said goodbye.
Marge wished us luck, and when we asked her how Laramie would feel about seeing a play about itself, she said,
I think we'd enjoy it. To show it's not the hellhole of the earth would be nice. But that is up to how you portray us, and that in turn is up to how Laramie behaves.
As we were getting off the phone, she said to me,
Now, you, take care. I love you, honey.
Doc asked me if I wanted to ghostwrite a book about the whole event. Galloway offered me or anyone else a place to stay if and when we come back to Laramie. He also seemed interested as to whether there would be any open auditions for this play.
We left Laramie at about 7 in the evening. On the way to Denver, I looked in my rearview mirror to take one glance over the town.
and I will trust that if you're at a play of this, that you say it right. You need to do your best to say it correct.
And in the distance, I could see the sparkling lights of Laramie, Wyoming.